I came home after a long, exhausting day, just wanting to get inside and crash. I walked up to my front door, stuck my key in the lock. Nothing. It wouldn't turn. At first I thought maybe I was just tired or holding the key wrong. Tried again, still stuck. Then it hit me. Someone had jammed something in there. I bent down, looked closer, and yeah, there it was. Glue. Thick, clear, industrial-grade super glue. Someone had actually poured glue into my front door lock. I stood there stunned, holding my key like an idiot, trying to process what kind of person would do that. But deep down, I already knew. It had to be her. The president of the HOA. The same woman who had been nitpicking every tiny thing since the day I moved in. What she didn't know, what made this all so much sweeter, is that she wasn't just messing with some new neighbor, she was messing with her landlord. A few months before the lock incident, I decided to move into one of the rental homes I owned. I have a bunch of them across a few neighborhoods, but this one, Willow Creek Estates, seemed like a good place to slow down for a bit. Clean yards, quiet streets, matching mailboxes, the kind of neighborhood where people wave while walking their dogs and argue about Halloween decorations. I figured it'd be peaceful. I didn't tell anyone who I was. I just wanted to live like a normal resident for a while, not the landlord. So I kept things simple, moved into a recently empty 3-bedroom, and minded my own business. That's when I met her, the HOA president. She showed up not long after I moved in, like she'd been watching. Blonde helmet hair, bright pantsuit, way too much perfume for a morning visit. She gave me a once-over like I was tracking mud into her world. I could already tell she liked to be in control. But I smiled, stayed polite, and figured if I followed the rules, I'd be left alone. That didn't exactly work out. It started with the trash bin. I'd barely been moved in 2 days when I got a printed violation notice stuck to my front door. Apparently, my recycling bin was 3 inches too close to the curb. Not 4 feet. Not in the middle of the road. 3 inches. And the best part? There was a grainy, zoomed-in photo attached, like she had her own private surveillance team. I laughed it off, moved the bin back a few inches and didn't think much of it, but that was just the beginning. A few days later, I got another notice. This time it was about my grass. According to her, one patch near the front steps was 1/4 of an inch too long. She even used one of those little plastic rulers to measure it. I'm not kidding. Then it was the color of my front door, which, by the way, was the exact same color it was when the house was first built. Suddenly, it wasn't part of the approved color palette. She didn't just leave the notes in the mailbox either. She delivered them herself. Always at odd hours. Always with this weird, overly sweet voice, like she was doing me a huge favor by pointing these things out. Her smile never quite reached her eyes, and she had a way of looking past you, like she was already judging everything inside your house too. Still, I kept my cool. I smiled, nodded. I even bought a new lawnmower to hit the exact height she wanted. I figured playing nice would keep the peace. But clearly, that was never going to be enough. The glue in the lock was the last straw. I wasn't just annoyed anymore. I was done playing nice. After I managed to get back inside with the help of an emergency locksmith, I went straight to my security camera footage. I hadn't installed it because of the HOA drama. It was mainly for watching out for package thieves. But that night, it caught everything. The camera showed someone creeping up to my door, bundled up even though it was warm out, like they were trying to hide their identity. For a second, the porch light hit them just right. And that's when I saw it. The shiny, oversized flamingo brooch she always wore. That ridiculous thing could blind someone. And then there was the helmet of hair, sprayed into place like she'd just walked out of a wind tunnel. It was her. No question, that changed everything. This wasn't about grass or trash bins anymore. This was someone deliberately messing with my home. with me. It wasn't just petty now, it was criminal. And the part she still didn't know? She wasn't just going after a neighbor who annoyed her. She was going after the person who actually owned the house she lived in. That night, I decided it was time to stop putting up with it and start doing something about it. Once I cooled off a bit, I stopped thinking like a frustrated neighbor and started thinking like what I actually am. Someone who owns a lot of real estate. I went to my office, pulled up my spreadsheets, and started digging. I knew I owned a good number of houses in this neighborhood, but I hadn't really connected the dots until now. So I pulled the HOA's list of properties and cross-referenced it with my records. One by one, I went through the addresses. And the deeper I got, the more I started to smile. It turned out I didn't just own a few houses here. Out of 75 homes in the neighborhood, my different LLCs owned 52 of them. That's right, 52. Over 2/3 of the entire community. It was all split up between different company names for legal reasons, so nobody would think to connect it back to one person, not even the HOA president, especially not her. And then I looked up her address. That perfectly polished house where she handed out fines like Halloween candy? She didn't even own it. The property was held under one of my LLCs. I owned it. She was my tenant. The same woman who glued my lock shut, who scolded me over grass and trash, had been writing angry notes to her landlord without realizing it. All that power she thought she had? It was built on land she didn't even own. I'd stayed quiet long enough. Now it was time to use the truth and the paperwork to flip the entire game on her. Now that I knew exactly who I was dealing with and what I owned, it was time to do this the right way. I called my attorney, Claire. She's sharp, doesn't waste time, and has helped me handle property deals for years. I laid everything out for her. The glued lock, the footage, the pile of ridiculous HOA notices, and, of course, the golden detail, that the HOA president was living in a house I owned. Claire listened quietly, then gave me a slow smile. "You've got all the leverage," she said. And she was right. So we got to work. I went through every lease I held for the properties in the neighborhood, especially hers. Every single one had rules about tenant behavior. No harassment, no damaging property, no causing problems for neighbors. She had broken them all. Claire helped draft formal notices for lease violations and demands for repair costs. She also put together a packet showing all the evidence: photos, letters, security footage, even the locksmith's statement about the damage. Meanwhile, I started talking quietly to some of the other tenants. A few had already complained about her before, and now they were eager to share stories. More fines, more rules, more bullying. Turns out I wasn't the only one tired of her. She had been making life hard for almost everyone. I didn't need to yell or cause a scene. I just needed the truth, the law, and a stack of well-organized paperwork. I showed up at her door right on time. No property manager, no middleman, just me, dressed neatly and carrying the folder full of everything. She opened the door with her usual annoyed look, like I was already wasting her morning. Before she could say much, I introduced myself. "I'm from Oak Lane Holdings," I said calmly. "We own this property." Her face shifted. Confused at first. Then slightly smug, probably thinking I was just some office worker sent to fix her complaint about the fascia board. She started ranting about paint and garden gnomes like nothing was wrong, but I didn't let it go on long. "Actually," I said, still keeping my voice level, "I own this house. And I live at 12 Ashworth, too. The one you glued shut." That's when her face dropped. I laid it all out. The lease she signed, the rules she broke, the lock she damaged, the harassment she handed out like it was part of her job. I showed her the documents, proof of everything, told her she had 2 options. Option 1, resign as HOA president, pay for the damages, and finish out her lease quietly with no renewal. Option 2, face legal action, possible eviction, and a full case backed by every bit of evidence we had. She didn't say much after that, just stood there, holding the papers, completely silent. All that control she thought she had? Gone. And I hadn't raised my voice once. She resigned that same afternoon, sent out a short, cold email saying she was stepping down for personal reasons. No big speech, no apology to the community, just gone. Her lease? Not renewed. She had 60 days to move out, and she spent most of them pretending it wasn't happening. But it was. Her little inner circle started to fall apart, too. The board members who used to nod along with her at every meeting suddenly got very quiet. One of them backed out right away, probably hoping to save face. The other tried to argue, but once he realized he was also renting from me, he backed off fast. Without her, they had no power, no plan, nothing to stand on. For the first time since I moved in, the neighborhood felt normal. No more surprise notes, no more ruler-measured grass drama. People smiled again. You could feel it, like everyone was finally able to breathe. With her gone, we held a meeting to elect a new HOA board. This time, it wasn't just her friends or people who were too scared to speak up. We got real residents involved. Some homeowners, some long-term tenants who actually cared about the neighborhood and didn't just want to control it. One of the older tenants, Mrs. Henderson, even became the secretary. She'd been quiet before, but now she was taking notes and speaking up with confidence. The first thing the new board did? Clean house, all the silly rules, like banning certain wreaths or limiting gnomes to 6 inches tall. Gone. The paint palette that hadn't been updated since the 90s? Revised. It stopped feeling like we were all walking on eggshells. People started chatting at the mailbox again. A few even planned a block barbecue. The place finally felt like a neighborhood instead of some over-policed model village. It felt like home. In the end, she thought she could run the whole neighborhood with her clipboard and attitude. What she didn't know was that the quiet woman she kept pushing around owned most of the street, including the house she lived in. Turns out you don't need to yell or break rules to get justice. Sometimes, you just need to know the rules better than the person trying to weaponize them. Have you ever dealt with an HOA nightmare, or someone who thought they were in charge when they really weren't? I want to hear it. Drop your wildest HOA or entitled neighbor story in the comments. I read everyone.